Whichever, it doesn't matter. Good morning. I'll wait just a minute for everyone to get in because we don't want them to miss the FERPA presentation as Mr. Boozer has indicated. Okay. Excuse me? You can't hear me? FERPA. Dr. Young allowed me to change the topic to FERPA. Okay. Someone has left an iPad or tablet. Does this look familiar? Okay, I'm sorry. It's not FERPA, but we will do that sometime later in the semester. We're going to talk about the college calendar for a little bit, and I don't know why they put me on the schedule for 30 minutes. I hope that it does not take 30 minutes. So, Mr. Bell, you can go ahead and get ready. First of all, I would like to recognize the 17-18 committee members. If you're in here, would you please stand? Wanda Austin, Earl Bynum, Tara Estes. Stay standing, please. Remain standing. Judy Harrell, Lisa Henson, Jeremy James, Lori Logan, Kevin Meadows, Jeff Mitchell, Suzanne Monday, Anna Owens, Anna Jean Presley, Gail Salter, Christy Whitfield, who is our chair for 17-18, myself, and then Dean Holland for his remainder of his time here. If anyone else has served on the committee in the past, please stand. Any prior committee? Yes. Sandy, Jackie, okay. All right, so you know what kind of job is that the committee has to take on. You may be seated. Now, as you can notice on the slide, some of them are indicated with an S and some with an F. The S is for staff, and the F is for faculty. I think with the 17-18 committee, we have 8 faculty members and 6 staff members. The committee charge, this committee recommends 2-year academic calendars for the college and coordinates calendar development with the requirements of the Alabama Community College system. The recommendation is presented to Administrative Council for approval, and then the instructional dean submits the approved calendar to the system office for final approval. Just a little bit about the committee from the past. Normally, the dean of instruction in the past would construct the calendar. He or she would then bring the calendar to the overall committee. The committee would review it and approve it. Then, as I said before, the instructional dean would submit to admin council for approval, and then on to the system office. Now, one thing in the past, the committee members knew some of the requirements that constructed the calendar, but not all. So what happened, the committee kind of got to tossing around the idea about, okay, Dean Holland, how is it really constructed? And so he informed us of that, and then we went out and found the system policies that deemed the calendar to be so, and we'll go through some of that here in just a minute. So I believe it was with the 15-16 calendar, calendar committee, we asked Dean Holland if we could take on the construction of the calendar from him and then present it back to him, and he graciously tossed that over quickly. So, but what that did do, it allowed the committee to fully understand how the calendar was constructed. And I tell you, it was more than we ever thought that went into it. So, Dean Holland, we thank you for doing that. However, I think if we could give it back, we probably would. So some of the things that we do now with the committee, within the big committee, we develop a subcommittee to create the calendar, which generally is constructed of the chair, vice chair, the administrative liaison, and then one other member of the committee. And so generally we meet during the spring, well, we meet fall and spring, but the calendar is constructed the first part of the spring with the subcommittee, and then when we meet in February or March, it's presented to the entire committee to review and approve. And I can guarantee you we pull out the two board policies that pertain to the calendar and make sure everything is correct and in order. Now, the board policies that pertain to this, which they just recently changed numbers, the two old policies was 201.02 and 609.01. The current policies, which I believe was just approved back in July, is 608.02 and 723.01. 608.02 refers to official holidays, as you can see there on the screen. It's pretty much the standard holidays: New Year's Day, MLK and Robert E. Lee birthday, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Veterans, Thanksgiving, day after Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day. 608 continued. Here it also deems that Dr. Young shall designate 5 other days on which the institution will be closed in the official approved calendar of the institution. And these days are generally, on most years, all 5 or during Christmas break. But then in the month of July, like we had this time, we were closed on the 3rd and the 4th. That 3rd took the 5th day, and so there was 4 at Christmas break instead of 5. Also, it talks about in here, I'm not going to go into this, about the normal work week for full-time non-instructional personnel as well as instructional personnel as well. Talks about the clock hours and everything for faculty. I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole nother ball game that Dean Holland takes care of and HR. Now it's going to get into a little bit about how the calendar is constructed. Here it talks about full-time instructors, librarians, and counselors are employed on academic year contract, fall and spring semesters, shall work the equivalent of 175 days. Full-time instructors, librarians, and counselors employed on a 12-month contract shall work the equivalent of 229 days. Those employed full-time for the summer shall work the equivalent of 54 days. Now, I know this may sound like Greek to some of the staff members and to some of the faculty members, but now we're going to get into 723.01, which helps the committee dictate how the calendar is constructed. Here it says 175 duty days for fall and spring semesters. 156 of those, which is 78 for fall and 78 for spring. With the color calendar, the yellow days for spring and the yellow days for fall, those are the 78 days that they're referring to here, of which must be instructional days. 54 duty days are the equivalent for summer term, 50 of which must be instructional days. Those 50 days during the summer are the yellow days as well. However, we're closed on Fridays during the summer, so you will see 40 yellow days instead of 50. And the other 10 days make up where we're closed on Friday. Also, the calendar shall include registration, final exam days, drop and add, and also holidays. And you might wonder, where do those other 19 days go for fall and spring? And that's the 175 minus the 156. Those are what we refer to as duty days, and those are the red and green days on the calendar. So registration and then the faculty duty days. And between fall and spring, there's 19 of those days. Generally, we have 10 of those green and red days during fall, and we have 9 of those days during spring. Now for summer, there's 4. Same thing, red and green. Generally have 3 at the beginning of summer, and then 1 at the end of the summer once final exams are complete. (723) continued. The fall semester shall include 2 days for statewide professional development. These 2 days are generally those 2 of the 3 days there during the week of Thanksgiving when classes are not in session, that Monday and Tuesday. That's what it's referring to there. Also, a minimum of 2 local professional development days are required for the year. And notice that did say minimum and not maximum. The fall semester must begin in August and end in December. Spring semesters must begin in January and end in May. Days that the institution is officially open are duty days for all full-time non-instructional personnel. So like while the faculty are off on the calendar, you'll see when the college is closed, there's a C in that blue block. But if there's not a C, that means the faculty and students are off, but the staff are here working. Are there any questions so far? I don't mean to kind of fly through this, but okay, good. I went to Dean Holland this morning. I said, I really wanted him to do this, but he declined. I was trying to, get him some exposure before he went out the door. Things that might potentially affect the way the calendar is created. The first one is leap year. Leap year actually throws the calendar off one day, and it does make a difference. Holidays, MLK and Lee holiday, as well as July the 4th. Sometimes with the start of spring semester, depending upon what week, what Monday that falls on, it could be good or it could be bad because I remember one year we started after that holiday, in which really pushed that spring semester back. So it really makes a difference. And I mentioned before about the 4th of July. It depends upon where it falls during the week, whether or not the committee looks at giving 2 days versus 1 day off. I know all of you like the 2 days, right? But just know every couple years we're going to have to work at least 2 days versus, be out 1 day versus being out 2. Also, spring breaks from our area high schools have a factor in the calendar. And what I mean by this is, for instance, this next year coming up for 17-18, Dothan City Schools and Houston County Schools, I think at some point had a meeting, and they agreed to take off the same week. Well, that didn't happen. Somehow Houston County changed and Dothan City remained the same. And so what happened there was a majority outside of Dothan City. So the spring break that you see for the 17-18 calendar pertains to all the schools, for the most part, outside of Dothan City. And so what happens there, the committee checks with all of the local school systems to see where the greatest effect is going to be, and that's what we go with, to where it's not going to affect as many faculty and staff members, but also especially our students. And so sometimes it works out perfect, and sometimes it does not. Also, end-of-term processing for financial aid and admissions and records sometimes plays into the calendar. Specifically, up until this last year, the end of summer was an issue for our offices, whereby we didn't have enough turnaround time. Generally, I think for the prior 7 or 8 years, there was really no turnaround time. We ended like on a Thursday, and we started back up with professional development and registration that very next week. One recent thing that came into play was graduation and when we could reserve the Civic Center. This happened with the 1920 academic calendar, May of 20, when I had Deborah go ahead and reserve. Generally what we do is once we call to get the contract for the current year, we reserve for the next available year, because generally we have the academic calendar out for 2 years at a time. And that's when we were informed that someone had the dates in May of 20 that we wanted. And so we had to go back and brainstorm and come up with a workaround, and we did. But also because we have one local college and then one out-of-state college that utilizes the Civic Center now for various functions as well as graduation, we went ahead and the subcommittee reconvened, and we went ahead and did the calendars for 2021 and 2021-22. So we have academic calendars all the way out through 2021 and 22. One thing that I did not list, sometimes Mr. Holland reminded me this morning about registration. At the beginning of the terms, we try our best to have registration on a Thursday and a Friday. Has been in the past a time or two where that did not work out. So sometimes that plays into it as to when we will start a term. And as I said, we have calendars all the way out through 21, 22. And that's it, folks. In a nutshell, that's it. But I would say, like I said, there's 8 faculty members represented on the committee, and there's 6 or 7 staff members. So Dean Holland, I think a year ago, opened it up for anyone who would like to become a part of the committee. Sometimes we say the more the merrier, but I will say some of the ones that have joined, I will not call any names. They did bring things to the table. We reviewed those, and some of those things we were able to do, but some of those things we were not able to do due to the constraints of the board policy and depending upon other factors within that upcoming academic year. Are there any questions? Yes. Awesome. Dean Bell, you ready?